6 weeks ago, and I haven't seen you for it.
And then my commissioners, if you guys can just make sure you can see, like, in
I
between.
just never get it on the bus.
Can you see her?
Captain Dupree. Captain Dupree. I need you to come over here real quick, please. Thank you.
Oh, not him.
Carry
Oh,
on.
well. Oh, Lordy.
Carry on.
Here comes the real hero.
Oh, we're doing a photo. I was like, okay, who's talking?
I step in front of all these important people. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us here today at the Marathon International Airport. My name is Shannon Davis Weiner, and I am the Director of Emergency Management for Monroe County. I would like to welcome all our special guests here today as we remember and discuss Hurricane Irma that made landfall here in 2016 in Monroe County. First, I would like to thank Director Richard Strickland, our airport director, for generously hosting us here today. As you'll hear, a marathon and the Marathon Airport played a big role in the Hurricane Irma response. With that, I would like to introduce to you the Florida Division of Emergency Management Director, Kevin Guthrie. Kevin has over 30 years of experience in public safety. He was a law enforcement officer for more than 23 years, an emergency manager, and a county administrator. He comes to us with wonderful experience. I like to call him the emergency manager's emergency manager. He knows that because he does a great service at the state in advocating for his locals. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kevin.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here with us again. As Shannon said, my name is Kevin Guthrie. I'm the Director of the Division of Emergency Management for the state of Florida. I want to just, again, thank the Governor for allowing us to do this and doing this fifth year commemoration, and the Governor apologizes that he could not be here in person. Also, the Lieutenant Governor apologizes that they could not be here in person as they have other state business going on today. As we commemorate the 5th anniversary of Hurricane Irma was the strongest hurricane ever observed in the open Atlantic Ocean and the longest-lived Category 5 hurricane on record. It was also the costliest storm to impact the state of Florida, which is why, under Governor Ron DeSantis' leadership, the division has prioritized distributing critical disaster recovery funding to support long-term recovery efforts for communities rebuilding from the devastating storm. Just a few short weeks ago, as we commemorated the 30th year of Hurricane Andrew, Lieutenant Governor announced that the division has paid over $7.5 billion in disaster recovery to local entities. I'm happy to say that today that number has raised another $100 million to $7.6 billion paid out in recovery funding alone since the governor took office. This includes over $4.4 billion in public assistance funding, with Hurricane Irma payments accounting for almost $2 billion to local entities, including a $7.5 million payout to agencies just this week alone. During Hurricane Irma, an estimated 6.8 million residents across 54 counties were ordered to evacuate, causing a significant traffic congestion and fuel issues throughout the state. This is why the division continues to stress the importance of disaster preparedness and planning before a storm even has the potential to impact your area. Floridians should know that if they live in an evacuation zone, low-lying zone, flood-prone area, a mobile home, or any other unsafe structure, they should evacuate. They should listen, if you're here in the Keys, to Shannon. Shannon is the local authority that will make that decision on evacuating from your home. It is also very important for residents to know their home and its ability to withstand strong winds and heavy rain. Both of these bullet points that I speak about or go into more detail on our website at floridadisaster.org/know. That's KNOW. The information will help residents better understand orders from local officials during a storm. Additionally, this season, the division has debuted a new campaign called Halfway Full is Halfway There. Residents should keep their vehicle tanks or charge their electric vehicles at least half full during the hurricane season to ensure they have enough fuel or battery life to evacuate as soon as that is possible after the order is given. without worrying about long lines at local gas stations and charging stations. No longer do Floridians need to evacuate hundreds of miles. We do believe that on a half a tank, most of the individuals can get to an evacuation location on that half a tank of gas. We do not need to go hundreds of miles. We are now at a point in Florida with our infrastructure to only evacuate tens of miles. I remember as a child, my family would evacuate to Atlanta, Georgia, 380 something miles away from Jacksonville, Florida. We don't have to do that anymore. So please make sure you look at floridadisaster.org/know, again that's KNOW, as well as floridadisaster.org to build your plan, as well as Shannon's local emergency management webpage here. To continue our program, I am honored to introduce the representative for the area, Representative Mooney.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, as a lifelong resident of the Florida Keys, hurricanes have been a major part of my life since I was a little boy. And I've always told people the same story. It's not just about what happens with hurricanes, with your destruction of your home, but what comes after a hurricane. After a hurricane is when really the rubber meets the road. We saw that. The good part of it is we come together as communities. That's the good part. The sad part is we have to do it that way. But the reality of it is that if you're new to the area, and we all know that our demographics are changing rapidly in Monroe County particularly, you must follow the guidelines. Listen to the experts. That's why they're the experts. It's like I say, it's not just about the structure. Your structure may very well stand a hurricane. But what you won't like about the hurricane is the day after, when you walk out your front door and not recognize what's around you. See things completely destroyed around you. There's no electricity, the water's down, the sewer's down. It's very uncomfortable. So if you're not used to that, I'm used to that. Most people not. So I always encourage people to please follow the experts' advice. Leave, be prepared, make sure you're ready, and do not drop your guard. It's early, it's been quiet, but the reality of it is the season is far from over, and we must keep our guard up, and you must, again, listen to everybody. You know, the beauty of where we live is that we are resilient. We continue to fund resiliency. Monroe County building codes are probably the strongest in the state of Florida, if not the country. And I will always encourage, like I did last year on the floor, that Florida state building codes need to be increased to Monroe County levels, and that's going to make the difference in the long run. Marathon was extremely hard hit. Extremely hard hit. I was here the day after, and actually the day it was over, and was riding around with the mayor and George, and it was a sad sight. And what was really sad again was the people who were suffering at that point. So please heed the advice, leave, let the experts take care of the problem here. We'll let you know when it's time to come back, and you'll have a much better way of life after a hurricane than you will just staying. Again, please heed the advice, and thank you.
So we have a very unique pleasure today. David Criado is one of the individuals that we wanted to speak today so that he could share his story about Hurricane Irma as a Hurricane Irma survivor. David, go ahead, buddy.
Let's put this down. Hi, my name is David Criado. I am 12 years old. I live in Big Pine Key. I was 7 at the time Hurricane Irma hit. My mom works for the building department, and my dad is the manager at FedEx on Big Pine Key. I learned how to evacuate at that time. We evacuated to Tampa, Florida to stay with my family. It was a very long week, but it was fun to visit my family and explore Tampa, Florida while I was away. I knew we could come home. When we come home, things would be different. When we came home, we saw homes, boats, and cars on the side of the road. Something I learned from the hurricane at school was how to make a go bag. A go bag I think every kid should have. 5 things I think a kid should have in their go bag would be a flashlight, a power bank, Uno or other card games so you don't stay bored, favorite snacks, and a sleeping bag to stay warm. I was very lucky because my house was still standing when we got home a week after the storm. The house only had minor roof damage. Some of my friends were not so lucky. They lost their homes. Many of them had to move away. While Hurricane Irma was a sad time for many, I look back at this fond memory with my family and helping neighbors clean up after the hurricane.
Thank you, David, for sharing that. One of the things that I learned about this community, as Representative Mooney mentioned, is the federal, state, and local partnership in the Keys is unmatched anywhere else in the state, what the individuals do here. So we're going to hear from some of our state agencies at this time. Captain David Dupree was at the tip of the spear down here with state's agency FWC, and we're going to hear from David.
Thank you, everyone. Again, my name is Captain David Dupree with the FWC. We spent all of us together. There's no one standing behind me that we don't know as a partner, as a friend. And Hurricane Irma, while there's a list upon list that you can make of all the things that happened that you felt were just terrible about the storm, I'm going to focus on the positive. The positive is the leadership that came out of Hurricane Irma, the partnerships that came out of Hurricane Irma have stood strong. They continue this day in all aspects, with our federal, our state partners, our locals, all of us together, sheriffs, chiefs, highway patrol, all of us working together all the time in every aspect of everything we're doing. We are in committees together. We are working currently with the migrant situations. We work with the narcotic situations. We work in every aspect of law enforcement and government together. So of all the things that came out of Hurricane Irma that were pretty awful, and again, you can make list upon list, these partnerships are so strong, and they are ideal, and they are models that I would challenge anybody in the nation to try and match. Our cell phones are full of each other's numbers. When we need something done, when Hurricane Irma comes, we're ready for it. When Hurricane whatever comes, we're ready for it because we study together, we work together, we train together, and we try to lead together. And during that time, it was all about survival. Politics was out of it. It was about making sure that the community is safe. The community is cared for. Our partners, Sheriff's Office never left. They stayed here the whole time. Nobody from the Sheriff's Office evacuated. FWC stepped out for a short time. We were the first ones back in. Highway Patrol was right there with us. We were here to help our partners. And that's the biggest thing that came out of Irma for me, and I think for the others behind us. How tight we are, how tight we'll stay. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Next up is a very dear friend of mine that I've known for 30 plus years with the Florida Highway Patrol, Colonel Gene Spaulding.
Thank you, Director Guthrie. I first want to thank Governor DeSantis, Lieutenant Governor Nunez for their excellent leadership. You know, these things, as we celebrate the 50th anniversary of Hurricane Irma, we don't survive these things without excellent leadership at all levels. And as Captain said, partnerships and collaboration. You know, I have the opportunity to travel the country, going to national conferences, and I always speak about how proud I am to be a Florida law enforcement officer because of our relationships with our Florida Sheriff's Association, our Florida Police Chiefs Association, our state law enforcement partners, and our federal law enforcement partners. We work hand in hand. During Hurricane Irma, the Florida Highway Patrol had 1,700 troopers on Alpha Bravo shift, canceled days off. This was 3 days before landfall. Continued, as the captain said, for several weeks afterward, preparing, trying to get ready. Evacuations, one of the largest evacuations in the history of the country, actually. When you have a storm that took the path of Hurricane Irma, you know, the first several days, we don't know whether it's going to be an East Coast landfall or a West Coast landfall. So we're having to prepare both areas. We're having to worry about getting fuel trucks in, getting utility companies back in, bridge infrastructure, working with our partners with the Department of Transportation. There is a myriad of things that go on in the planning stages, and I can honestly say that we call it the bubble at the state EOC. If people could have a snapshot of what goes on, a lot of us are in there for 18, 20 hours a day. Kevin and his crew stay round the clock. It's a phenomenal outpouring of collaboration. Sheriff Ramsey, you do a phenomenal job down here. I can't speak enough how great your agency is, and like the captain said, you guys were here You bunkered down, you sheltered in place, and was immediately on the ground working the roads and responding to the people in need. So I just can't say enough how thankful I am, how proud I am. Another thing I want to mention too is we have all of our public safety, whether it be our emergency managers, our law enforcement officers, our fire rescue personnel, they have families too. They have homes in these impact areas. And guess what? They're coming to work to provide for the citizens and the tourists of this state. And their families, a lot of time, are at home having to deal with what's going on with their homes and putting roofs on and getting trees out of driveways. So let's always remember that it's a team effort. We're all working together. And I just want to thank y'all for allowing me to be a part of it. Thank you, Kevin.
You may be wondering why we're here at the Marathon Airport. Marathon Airport, as we move into our local agencies, became the hub of activity to recover, if you will, from Hurricane Irma. The Air Force came in here, Coast Guard was in here, state law enforcement, as you've heard, state agencies, and then local agencies. So kicking off for the local level, we want to invite Monroe County Mayor David Rice to the podium. Mayor.
Thank you very much. We are here pretty much at what we saw as ground zero during the recovery effort. Hurricanes, as we all know, is one of the greatest forces of nature, one of the most destructive events that can happen on the face of the earth. And I have realized long before now, watching our responses and preparation to them reminds me of a well-orchestrated, well-planned ballet. So many team members, many of them represented here today, play a part. There's probably 75 to 100 people in the Emergency Operations Center, wired into God knows where, working on the behalf of the citizens from Monroe County. It's truly an incredible operation to be a part of. One of the things that we learned 5 years ago is that our so-called Emergency Operations Center really is not. We've done it kind of temporarily. It's wired like a spaceship 2 days before it's needed, and everybody crowds in with no place to shower, no place to sleep, and few places to even blink. It's that crowded. We also learned that that building is not structurally sound enough for the type of hurricane that it could have been facing at that time. Today we have plans, and we very soon will be breaking ground on what will be a state-of-the-art emergency operations center, which will be located right down on the end of the runway, because this runway becomes a lifeline after a hurricane. Prior to the hurricane, you'll see huge military aircraft landing here to evacuate individuals who are in our various hospitals. You'll see the county organizing to provide transportation for special needs people up to shelters on the mainland, and it all works so in such an intertwined manner that it's truly just incredible to watch. For those people who have said what it's like after a hurricane, if you haven't had the pleasure of being here, you don't want to find out. We hope you will listen when we declare an emergency hurricane evacuation order, because it's not just surviving the hurricane, it's making it without water, electricity, by the way, air conditioning. Many of us know what it is not to have that. There's a funny thing. Seems like after a hurricane in the next few days, there's absolutely no wind. The heat and the humidity is incredible. Supporting the people who have to stay in the county to reopen and prepare it is a monstrous job. Supporting general members of the population who decided not to evacuate is at times impossible. So if you stay, plan for those days. Plan your supplies. Plan everything you can, because you can't depend on government to step in and cover for your lack of planning. We hope you'll go. If you don't, well, good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Rice. Now, I'd like to invite to the podium Monroe County Administrator Roman Gustafson.
Thank you, everybody, for showing up. So I'm going to put some numbers to all this stuff, because you hear about the partnerships, you hear about what we've done. Irma was my 5th hurricane. I go back to 1992 when I was with Miami-Dade County for Andrew. And the partnerships are so important because back at Andrew, I was a pollution control inspector at the time, and then I became a budget analyst, and I got into management. It took over 20 years to get fully reimbursed for Andrew from Miami-Dade County. Then fast forward to 2005 here with Wilma, and our budget director's here, and she was just telling me it took over 12 years to get reimbursed for that, for us to get reimbursed. Now, as a local administrator, you can imagine we have to put the money up front, we get reimbursed. So, and just to put it in context, for Wilma, it was over $40 million that we spent in those first 3 or 4 months. So we're up to about $38 million. So I want to have an applause, because Kevin's been a big part of that to get us where we are today for $38 million so far. Thank you. So here we are at 5 years, and it's almost totally reimbursed, which is great. Our coffers are back. Of course, we bounced back, and everything's been great. But again, the partnerships is so important. I also was talking to, the mayor mentioned the EOC. We're going to build it right here on the runway, next to the runway. The EOC is really, what we have now is really our meeting room. And we convert it to an EOC right before the storm comes. But it's rated to a Category 2, maybe a Category 3. And all we know is that Wilma was a 5. So we had to move, and I was talking to our partners in the media, said, you should mention that. We had to move the whole EOC Saturday morning. Over 110 people, I think it was, got in cars and trucks and moved all the way north to Ocean Reef. So Ocean Reef was there for us. They had Category 5 buildings that they can, but can you imagine that? We don't want to have to do that again, so we want to make sure our EOC gets built. And again, the state and the feds have come through. We're a little short, so we're about $4 or $5 million short, so do not allow this man to leave without that $4 or $5 million.
You already have.
Okay, all right. He said, we're good?
We're not good.
Okay.
You already mentioned it. You already
I
mentioned
tried. Get it on camera. So we're a little short, not because of what happened, but just everything's cost escalated, of course. So we're a little short. We hope to be able to get state or federal money to be able to complete that. Like the mayor said, we're going to have a groundbreaking here soon. So again, thank you all for coming. And this partnership, Kevin, thank you so much for coming. Okay, thank you.
Roman calls me often. So again, but it's a great partnership. I met Roman right after Hurricane Irma, and we certainly have fostered a friendship and a professional working relationship. So I appreciate your partnership, Roman, and everything you do here for the citizens of Monroe County. Next up to speak is the Monroe County Sheriff, Sheriff Rick Ramsey. Sheriff.
Thank you. Thank you, friends. This was obviously one of the worst storms we've ever seen. I remember sitting back and seeing the storm out in the Atlantic exceeding 200 miles an hour, and me and my team members talking about this and saying, holy smokes, this comes here, there'd be nothing left. As we watched the storm, I remember at one point in time in the 5-day cone, the only county that wasn't in the 5-day cone was Monroe. We're thinking this is the safest place to be. It was all expected to turn up. As time went down, because you can never really determine where it's going to go, it kept jogging down. Ultimately, those 66 other counties which were in the cone were clear. The one county who was clear at the time was ground zero. One of the most difficult times for us in law enforcement is an evacuation. Most counties have 3, 4, 5 different roads. One road gets shut down from a crash, you can divert. We only have one road. For us, trying to evacuate a mass amount of people is one of our biggest challenges ever. A small minor car crash stops the road. On top of that, because of the magnitude of the storm, we decided to evacuate our main jail systems. We've never in the history of the Sheriff's Office evacuated 600 inmates with almost no notice. We had to do crisis management, come up with some fast stuff. As we've heard today about our partnerships, every agency talks about partnerships and how great they are, which is awesome. Most are. But I say no other county has the partnership relationship we have here. I always talk to my staff, my fellow team members from the state, federal. I talk about communication, cooperation, partnership, and teamwork. All critical on a daily basis, especially when we have something like this heading our way. If we're not working on the same team, rowing in the same direction, we're not going to be successful. We got through one of the most difficult, challenging times, as you heard, when we came out after the storm, and we looked back and saw what was around. There was almost nothing you could even recognize. I remember the longest time trying to get a cell phone satellite service. Cell phones were out satellite. When I finally got a hold of the Florida Sheriff's Association in Tallahassee, I talked to the executive director, Steve Casey. He says, "We couldn't get a hold of you for days." I said, "Brother, there ain't nothing here to get a hold of." He said, "Well, what do you need? We're going to send you anything you need." I said, "We need everything. There's nothing left." It was so overwhelming, a community you grew up in. You policed for 35 years, and I've been through every hurricane there is here. To walk out and see that devastation, you just wanted to cry. And for the first 72 hours, you're virtually on your own. We have to have plans to somehow take care of our own people. The people didn't leave. Do SAR mission, search and rescue. As you've heard, the roads were impassable. We had 3 or 4 feet of sand, 3 or 4 feet of seaweed, boats on the highway. Well, most people evacuated with heavy equipment. Trying to get equipment, people, to even open the roads was challenging at best. That was my top priority. I have to get these roads open so we can start trying to look and help salvage what's left, help people, do search and rescue missions. It was something to see on a bad note, but like Captain Dupre said, on a positive note, to see those strong partnerships that we've worked so hard to build over the many years, people to flood in to help and support, state, local, federal, our friends in FHP, always a good partner and friend, FWC, our community leaders, to come together and show true leadership and focus more energy on how to get it done than why we can't survive, we're not going to get it done, was a true testament to leadership. So I want to thank each and every one of you, my partners I've had in the past, present, and future, for all the efforts you made to make this, get through this now, and in the future, another storm, I know I can count on you again in the future. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Sheriff Ramsey. City of Marathon Mayor John Bordas.
Five years ago, when Hurricane Irma came through, a lot of lives changed, and hurricanes are very much transformative events. A lot of people didn't recover, and we did lose population, and we feel bad for that. But a lot of people stuck it out. They have recovered. Case in point here, I finally got into my new rebuilt home just a couple of weekends ago. So progress is being made. But one of the things you do hear about, a lot of the people up here have spoken about today, is the partnerships. The partnerships between our local governments, our law enforcement agencies, the state, and I just want to say, just as Roman did, a personal thanks to our director and the entire Florida Department of Emergency Management for helping us be made whole through the reimbursement process after the storm, and so thank you very much for that. Also like to thank our partnerships with our National Weather Service office. John Rizzo's out here, and he's keeps us informed, our partnership with the National Hurricane Center, and we have a great working relationship as our city with our county emergency managers and the state emergency management as well. One of the things that, if there is a takeaway from this at all, is to listen to these emergency managers. If they tell you to get out, please get out. It's going to be so much better. Houses can be destroyed. Possessions can be lost. But lives, once they're lost, there's no coming back from that. So it's a lot better to be somewhere where you're safe. Come back and deal with the aftermath when you can. But stay safe. And again, one other thing too, don't come back until they tell you it's safe. Because a lot of times it isn't, because of the infrastructure damage and everything else. But we do have a great working relationship with all of our other local agencies, the state, our weather people, our law enforcement offices, and of course our Coast Guard. Thanks to all of them, it is a well-oiled machine, and when they say something, please listen, develop your plan, and stay vigilant through this hurricane season and the rest of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Next, we certainly appreciate our partnership with the National Weather Service and National Hurricane Center, so I'd like to ask Acting Director Jamie Rome come up to the podium and talk to us a little bit about from the National Hurricanes perspective.
Well, in my 23 years, I've followed a lot of difficult speakers in terms of, but I think you take the cake and you and I are going to have a chat about a job after this. But before, lessons learned in Irma, I think we need to speak briefly about what the Keys and the people who occupy it mean to all of us here in Florida to really understand the lessons learned from it. I think the tourism numbers speak for themselves. That shows the gracious hospitality that this community provides to visitors from all over the world, not just Florida, all over the world. And people keep coming back time and time again. It suggests how just good old-fashioned charm and welcoming spirit this community has. It also happens to be, for us in South Florida, a place to retreat and recover from the ills of a hard life. Things have gotten really, really difficult. And certainly, for me personally, it is, and all of us, pirates born 200 years too late, and certainly this over 40 victim of fate. It's a place to come and really recover. And when the heavy burden of being the acting director fell upon me, take a guess where I was.
Here.
In the Keys. When the announcement was made, I was here in the Keys to mentally prepare for what stood before me. Now, I tell you that long story because you need that context that after Irma, when we all rushed down here to try to pick up the pieces and help the community, that charm and warm hospitality was still there. Irma broke these people's homes, but it didn't break their spirit. It didn't break their way of life. It didn't break their charm and hospitality. That is the epitome of resilience. We tend to think about resilience in terms of stuff, making stuff more resilient. But to me, resilience is the community and the people who occupy it, helping them ride the storm unchanged. Their way of life, their customs, how they do things, completely unchanged. And that's what I saw when I came down here. Now, a couple of lessons to build on what you've heard about evacuation, and this is near and dear to me personally. As I was walking through the damage, the survey of damage, have you seen these new impact glass windows that everybody is so proud of? People back in my community love to brag, I've got impact glass, I'm fine. I actually saw a house with that impact glass still intact as engineered, was ripped literally off the foundation of the house, just ripped and thrown inland with a mangled mass of debris by the storm surge. Imagine if those residents hadn't evacuated. I was struck by that, how violent water can be. And I think you've all seen the Hurricane Center's beefed up language with respect to storm surge. But then as I was walking around, another lesson I learned, and this one's a little bit more lighthearted, I was talking to a woman about why she evacuated. And she was explaining in great detail how she looked at a prediction from the Hurricane Center. I knew exactly which product she was looking at, and she was interpreting it just well. And her husband overheard and comes running over and saying, no, I knew. I've been here forever. I knew. The lesson here for you guys, as I listen to you wives, is the nature of forecasting and evacuation has dramatically changed over the last 10 or 15 years. And if you're making a decision based off something you experienced 10 years ago or your own perception of your own expertise, at some point you're going to make a fatal decision. If you're asked to evacuate, don't ask for justification. Don't ask for someone to explain why. If you're asked to go, you've got to go because it's grounded in the very best science available. And more importantly, if you're not asked to evacuate, please don't clog up the roads, suck up the gas, get in the way. The last thing I want to say about evacuating and not evacuation is all these first responders are flanked. You may think that choosing not to evacuate is a personal decision and a personal right. If you choose not to evacuate and you have to be rescued, you've now pulled all of these people into your poor decision making. They have to come out and get you. They have to stop other important post-storm recovery activities to come make up for your poor decision. So think about that. The other thing is survey after survey after survey is ask people why they don't evacuate. Sometimes they say, my neighbor didn't. I didn't see my neighbor go. So you're not just making a decision for yourself. You're making a decision for your community. And so take the high road. If you're asked to evacuate, you absolutely have to do so. So thank you all so much for having me. It was a treat to drive down. It's still as gorgeous as ever. I wish I could stay, but unfortunately I'll be headed back this afternoon. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jamie. National Weather Service, Key West, Chip Casper.
Hello, everybody. It's hard to believe it's been 5 years. I'm the meteorologist in charge at our local National Weather Service office, which is down in Key West, Florida, right across from City Hall. And I've been working down here for almost a quarter century and been through quite a few storms. Of course, nothing was like Hurricane Irma. And there's really not a day that goes by that I don't think about Irma at some point during the day. Maybe others here have that same feeling. You've heard a lot about planning, preparation, people, and partnerships. And we're really lucky here, as others have stated, to have really solid partnerships and teamwork. You know, at the National Weather Service, our mission is simple. We're a public safety agency. Our mission is the protection of life and property. And we're also lucky to have a good team, and not only in Key West, but as you heard Jamie talk about it up at the National Hurricane Center. And you can see Jamie gets us here in the Keys. And people often ask, hey Chip, you know, what's the best model for hurricanes, or where do I go for the best information? I said, you just find that line that says National Hurricane Center. Jamie leads the team of the best men and women scientists for hurricane prediction on the planet, literally. They have the numbers to prove it year in and year out. And we work with them closely. Our team down in Key West, we really focus on impacts. And our whole purpose is to provide the people behind me with the information, the data, the knowledge they need to make decisions that will protect your life and then eventually get you back home as soon as possible. So please rely on the trusted sources of information, hurricanes.gov, weather.gov/key, and follow the advice of these expert men and women behind me. Thank you.
So in closing and wrap up, I just want to reiterate a couple of things that have been mentioned here. The partnerships that are here, the leadership that is here. You know, Roman, I was just thinking, I don't know that you recall this conversation with me, you, and the former director, that you guys had a target. I think it was like 30 days. We want tourism back up and running in 30 days. I think that was the number, the target range. And I think you guys exceeded that by a handful of days. 2 weeks was 2 weeks for kids. So that's a resilient community, getting the economic engine back up and running. And, you know, we talk about you've heard a couple of stories up here about how the division has gotten money back to the community faster. That was a direct result of one and only one person. That was Governor Ron DeSantis making an administrative policy decision for the state of Florida that we were going to change the way that we reimburse people. So we were able to put that money back out here, and I am happy to say and represent the men and women that got that done and continue to do that good work on a day-to-day basis. $7.6 billion reimbursed to individuals for the last 4 years plus of hurricane seasons. So the last thing I would say is, two more things. Number one, floridadisaster.org is where you can help build a plan. Obviously, Monroe County Emergency Management webpage as well. We've talked about it, floridadisaster.org/know, KNOW. We want to make sure that people know that. Please follow us on Twitter on Facebook and on Twitter at FLCERT. So please make sure that you're keeping up with the best and latest of communication. And the very last thing I'd say is, to our media folks that are represented here, we cannot do our messaging, we could not get our story out without your help. And I appreciate every single one of you being here today and being a part of our team that helps us communicate with the public. Thank you very much, and thank you for your attendance today.